Mark was photographing an assignment and the client came up to him and asked, "Would you mind just giving me the raw files and forget about the post-production?" So the question is, what should have Mark done? Is it a good idea to give your clients raw files? Welcome, this is the Pricing for Photographers channel where we discuss pricing and all the elements around pricing your photography, and it gets pretty deep, but the fact is I'm on a mission to help make this a much healthier industry and, of course, most important, make your business profitable. So should Mark have given the client the raw file? Well, there are a couple of ways you can approach this, and really it depends on the type of client it is, and we'll talk about that in a few moments. But what do I mean by a raw file? Do I mean the raw file, the unedited or untouched or unprocessed file in your camera? Well, the answer is yes, but I also mean the JPEG that hasn't been touched in post-processing. Honestly, the fact is today, much of our style in photography comes from the post-processing. Now, if you're doing documentary photography, well, then maybe there's not a lot of post-processing, but you're certainly doing editing, and editing is really important. So just putting all of your files on a disk and handing it over to the client, I highly, 99.9% of the time, recommend you don't do that, because now you're putting everything else in somebody else's hands. Let's think about it. You took some great photographs for a family and you just hand those images over to them. Now, someone sees a picture in a frame and it's off color, it doesn't look very good, it's not been well processed. And someone asks the family, "Hey, who took that photograph?" And they share your name, or even worse, they put it on Facebook or LinkedIn or Pinterest or Instagram, wherever, and they give you all the credit in the world for the poorly processed photograph that represents you. As I mentioned, I would never hand over all the images unedited. I would definitely want to go through them and edit and take out the really bad ones that would represent my work extremely poorly. Hey, we all have those images that are just off and we don't want to get out there. And quite honestly, even though you know that maybe the client may edit them out, it still represents you. If they see 3 or 4 poor images in a row, that's going to reflect on you. So you want to at least edit those ones out, and at minimum, pull the images that are good into Lightroom and make some basic adjustments before you hand them off. Now, when it comes to real, unprocessed files directly from your camera, you definitely do not want to give those away unless they are professionals. Now, there are some large ad agencies that I work for where I do give them the final raw file because they have a process that they are going to go through. A very high-end process. In some cases, they work with the files better than I do. In other words, I have confidence when I hand over those files. And 2, they're not looking for a specific post-processing style from me. So that is something you have to ask yourself. What is it that they hired you for? Did they hire you for a specific style? In other words, quite often when we're qualifying our prospects, we ask them, is there a specific image in my portfolio that you saw that made you want to contact me? Now, if it's a highly processed file, there is no way in the world I'm going to let them try and do it themselves. However, if it's a professional team, I tend not to worry about handing that file off. But you need to consider some other consequences. For example, this is the original file. If you have the original file and there's ever a copyright issue or some kind of issue related to that image, you want to make sure you have the original file. If everybody else are only able to produce smaller files, in other words, not the original raw file, it proves that it's from your camera. Now, of course, you can set your camera up to say this is a copyrighted image from you, and I highly recommend you do that. But the fact is, having that original file is kind of like having the original negatives of the old days, and it's really valuable. So, rather than handing off a file thinking, oh, I don't have to do any post-production work, I'll charge them less, I might consider charging them more because the value of that raw file is actually higher, depending on the amount of post-production you do, of course. It's not unacceptable to add a fee to raw file purchases because of that value. And you let people know that it's an additional 20% if they take the raw file direct. Now you can certainly add another, say, 20% or maybe 50% to raw file purchases just because that file is so much more valuable. And it also lets people know that you highly value that file and they should too. But again, that comes down to professional commercial advertising magazines. They know how to generally work with files well. But when it comes to the general public, weddings and seniors and family events, charities, don't do it. I would say that's a 99.999% no way in heck I'm going to hand over all of these files. The cost of handing over your raw files isn't necessarily the discount you give your client because you're not doing as much post-production, nor is it the premium you receive because you have that additional premium for giving raw files. The cost is to your reputation. The cost is to your brand if the wrong people start showing your images poorly processed or not processed at all and putting your name on it. This is hurting your reputation. And when you hurt your reputation, it most certainly can hurt your income. So what are your rules for giving away raw files? Do you do it? Do you not? I look forward to reading your answers in the comments below. And of course, if you found this video valuable, make sure you like it and share it with your friends. If you don't want to miss a future upload, be sure to subscribe. And of course, hit that bell icon and you'll be notified when I go live to answer your pricing questions.